Walt, cue the music, but please don't cue Send in the Clowns by Frank Sinatra. We're here to celebrate, not disappoint. It is our 1 year anniversary of Autonomy Markets. Can you believe that each and every week we break down the Autonomy Markets? Some analysis, some entertainment, some laugh, some pontificating. I can't believe we made it. You slid into my DMs, and here we are. We produced this shoe for over a year.
Well, Grayson, I'm not sure I'm sliding into anyone's DMs. I don't know about that. I do know that, I mean, we've been kind of, talking to each other for years. I've been started looking at this back in 2016 with the Uber IPO. You well before that, talking to ATG before, obviously, that was dismantled by Dara. Obviously took a bit of a sabbatical and have been back more recently. Sabbatical specifically on autonomy, along as many investors, given a lot of those early promises weren't delivered on. It's great to be re-engaged over the past couple of years. Thank you for pushing me to do this over the past year. This has been huge. Thank you, more importantly, to our listeners, who I think, I've done a lot of tech industry sectors over the past 30 years. Some of the smartest group, in terms of the listeners, the engagement has been phenomenal. The industry, thanks to the industry, because over the past year, with all this new competition, things have really been accelerating in the past year. So we, I think, entered in the right time. And look, it's been great. We've seen tremendous growth. And I think now we're basically the only weekly podcast going through and discussing all these major things that are happening every week. But thanks to the industry for giving us something to discuss every week, because it's been great.
And thanks for you for teaming up with me and for you and I brainstorming this idea. And I know when we were starting, is now the right time, is not the right time. And you and I just said, fuck it, let's do it. And it turns out we were right. And to the listeners and viewers, thanks for the engagement. Walt and I read every one of your comments, and you really make this show. And to everybody that tunes in every week, thank you. And to Walt, thanks, sir. This has been a fun journey. We got many more years ahead on this train. And now let's get on to the show. That's why you're here. You're here for Autonomy Markets. We're headed into Labor Day. I'm having a big Labor Day party. A lot of folks are. But the news in the Autonomy Markets keeps on going. Last Sunday, Dara Khosrowshahi came out and made a statement about LiDAR. And what happens when anybody makes a statement about LiDAR? The pot gets stirred and the LiDAR debate heats up.
Before we get to his quote, Grayson, I want to half commend you for your pronunciation. I can't even pronounce pronunciation of Dara Khosrowshahi, because I think on past podcasts, that's one feedback we didn't get from our listeners. They were nice on you. I think you were saying you were calling him Khosrowshahi or whatever, but we did go to the internet. It's Khosrowshahi. and I've actually, I think, mispronounced his first name on many, taking the Long Island Dara as opposed to Dara. So to our listeners, we'll try and get that right, but you have to admit it's not an easy name. It's not an easy name to pronounce.
It's not. To the individual that created the video on YouTube of how to pronounce it, thank you. You made this segment of the show great. Now that we got the hooked on phonics out of the way, let's get on to the quote here. And I'm going to quote this here because I'm good at that. Elon, you'll say I'm wrong, but in the short term, it will be very difficult to have a camera-only autonomous car like Tesla. Camera, LiDAR, and radar is the right solution. The pot is stirred, Walt. The pot is stirred.
The quote is taken out of context. I haven't listened to the whole interview, but he said what he said. Obviously, our DMs and various sources of how we can be reached lit up on those comments because of this kind of embracement of LiDAR and the debates that we've had here on the role that it plays and Tesla's choice to use it or not to use it. And what's, I think, fascinating about this is, first off, Uber has partnerships and investments in two companies that are developing solutions that don't use LiDAR. One is Wave, well known. The other is Nuro. Now, look, Nuro does have a solid state LiDAR in their solution, but it's ironic. You put your Inspector Clouseau hat on recently. Literally this week, just a few days after Dara said this, there was a tweet that emerged from Nuro that said, quote, "No LiDAR? No problem. Watch the Nuro driver politely yield to another car on a narrow neighborhood street." And then there's a video, whatever. So you had your your Clouseau hat on, sent this to me. I'm about to do one of my kind of like, wow, isn't this interesting? Because everyone was like, going after me about, about Uber and Dara and no LiDAR. By the time I got that thing retweeted, it had already been deleted. What are your thoughts?
It went bye-bye, and I want to pull another quote out from Mr. Khosrowshahi's interview here. And I'm going to quote this one because this is building on this and getting this even more interesting here for you to break down, Walt. In quote, all of our partners that we are working with now are using a combination of camera, radar, and LiDAR. And I personally think that is the right solution, but I could be proven wrong. All of our partners is the key terminology there.
Yeah, and look, we're parsing things. I mean, Wave, I think, is much more embracing of without LiDAR. Again, Neuro, we know they have a solid state, in their system, which is really cheap. I mean, it's one of these things. We have these like kind of very, very impassioned arguments, LiDAR or not LiDAR. Why isn't there impassioned arguments about someone saying like, look, the spinny LiDARs that Waymo is using on all of their vehicles is so much better, and how dare Noro use a solid state LiDAR? Like, there's probably, a segment of people that are believers in versions of LiDAR as well. So, but again, it's odd. At the end of the day, I think a lot of those comments, again, I haven't listened to the whole thing. Dara is a good CEO, right? And he is, not the type of person to get, I think dug in on a viewpoint. So I think we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. And I'm sure that as these technologies evolve, they will go with whatever the best solution is with them, the safest, and the something that can generate them positive economics as well.
I fully agree with the statements about Dara, but I want to point out, and here comes the feedback, if you want to call it the hate mail. At some point, I'm not giving a timeline, I'm not giving names, you will be able to scale vision only. And then you'll be able to scale LiDAR. There's going to be both solutions in the market. This is not a one-size-fits-all market. There's going to be multiple solutions in the market.
Well, we'll see. I mean, that's a prediction. I'm certainly not going to rule it out. I'm hopeful that happens. I think you have some of the smartest people in the world at Tesla, at Wave, and Nuro. And frankly, by the way, at Waymo itself, who is also exploring, alternative solutions to their current ecosystem or their current stack. So we're hopeful that they can do whatever's best and that can generate a positive return so that these things can scale.
You have to search into the pro Waymo, pro LiDAR, folks. Let's not forget, this year, Waymo published a paper called the Emma paper, which was a vision-only paper. That's right, Waymo published a vision-only paper. Do they have a test vehicle at the castle? We don't know, but there's a public paper that Waymo's currently looking at it. I went to a conference hosted by Applied Intuition this year. Sebastian Thrun comes on stage and says Larry Page, one of the founders of Google, wants a vision-only system. It could happen. There's public statements and papers we could point at. So at some point, Waymo could go vision-only, and they probably will. When that happens, I don't know. But that interview with Mr. Khosrowshahi caught the attention of none other, drumroll, zzz, Elon Musk. And what does Mr. Musk like to do? He likes to post on X. And in response to that video clip, Mr. Musk tweeted the following, and I'm going to quote Mr. Musk here, and quote, LiDAR and radar reduce safety due to sensor contention. If LiDAR/radars disagree with cameras, which one wins? This sensor ambiguity causes increased, not decreased risk. That's why Waymos can't drive on highways. We've turned off the radars in Teslas to increase safety. Cameras, FTW, end quote.
I mean, this is not new. This is stuff that we've discussed. We're not the only people that have engaged with Tesla to understand their reasons. Many times I try and correct this in social media when people are like, oh, it's so cheap. It's like, it's not about whether the LiDAR sensor is expensive or cheap. That is not why Tesla is making this decision. It's exactly what Elon laid out. Now, you could argue that you think that's wrong. That's not how safety is. Like, again, that's fine. That is your argument. But there are a group of engineers that have a different argument, right? And that is what they're executing on. So again, not surprising. And look, at the end of the day, like in the past, Dara's like, yeah, we'd love to work with Tesla. That's clearly not going to happen, right? Because Tesla doesn't want it to happen. If tomorrow Tesla said, yeah, we've changed our model, rather than doing the Robotaxi fleet, we're gonna allow these cars to be plugged into Uber. We're gonna do a deal with Uber. Do you think maybe it's possible that the commentary around LiDAR might change out of people from LiDAR? Possible, right? I mean, they've been shut out though, so that obviously impacts how they communicate things. But again, you got to keep in mind you have Uber, you have other partners, and those other partners are also working on camera only solutions, end to end solutions, because we are in the AI era now.
We're in the AI era. Yes, if that was to happen, which I don't believe it will, it'd be like a Looney Tunes commercial on Warner Brothers. Zzz, turn right around. The commentary in the marketplace would completely change.
The flip side of that argument as well, in terms of everything changing in your perfect Grayson, zzz, what if we woke up tomorrow and Elon was like, you know what, we figured out how to have these sensors communicate together. And we're going to put a LiDAR on the car, solid state, whatever it is. Do you think that that 100% of the people that have been like super anti-Tesla, and there's some out there that are really, really vocalize it, let's call it that, would suddenly be like, oh, like this is great. Now I think Tesla, this is the way for autonomy and Tesla is going to be a major competitor. Or do you think there would be just one other thing that they are going to try and, knock at this company in terms of their ability to execute on autonomy? What's your guess?
You would have two different crowds. You would have the radical fanatics that no matter what happens are never going to budge. And then on the other side, you're going to have another crowd that's going to say, I told you so. I told you so. I told you need LiDAR. Mr. Musk, he came around. He found the LiDAR religion. Holy wow, he's the greatest thing since life spread. And this fanatical group, for whatever reason, they drank the Kool-Aid, they're never getting off that train. So you're going to have a divide.
My guess is there's going to be more so on that group. Not the ones, yeah, there'll be the I told you so's, which is fine. Like, what does Elon care? Like, fine, yeah, you told me and whatever. This is part of being, thoughtful and, deciding you have new information, you change. They've done that, I think, at SpaceX on many occasions. So in this case, my guess is there's some views out there that are so dug in on this company for whatever reason that even if they put a LiDAR on their car tomorrow, we'd still probably have this like, oh, these guys are going to fail and they're never going to get to autonomy. But I could be wrong.
I'm going to take this a little close to the edge here. My wife and I were talking about this at dinner the other night. Could you imagine if the fanatical group, for every negative tweet they put on Tesla, they bought $1 of share? Would they be negative because that balance would have kept growing over the years?
I don't know about that. And look, let's be clear, there's just as many, if not more, fanatical pro-Tesla people that unfairly rip into Waymo's approach and saying Waymo is going to be obliterated off the face of the earth. And those people are, I think, deserve as much questions as those that, have a very emotional view towards Tesla's approach to autonomy.
There's a lot of emotion in the LiDAR debate, the Tesla debate, the Tesla versus Waymo debate. You and I, we don't get emotional. We get accused of being Tesla stands, but we're like umpires. We're calling balls and strikes as we see it. And now let's get to Robotaxi in Austin. They announced this week they've expanded from 91 square miles to 173 square miles in Austin. That's right, 173 square miles. They doubled the fleet by 50%. You can now get dropped off at the Austin Bergam Airport. You can now go visit Giga. Is this a sign of things to come of how fast Tesla is going to ramp when they eventually move into new markets outside of California?
I mean, steady progress. And, they're increasing the ODM and, you kind of check off criticisms. Well, this only works in a certain area that can be engineered to do that, checking another box. Obviously, the big one everyone wants to see, I think, is taking the observer in the passenger seat, safety driver, whatever you want to call them, out of the car. And obviously opening up the app to more and more people so you can have some more, voices out there talking about it. We've seen more people. We'll get to that, I think, in the next segment, someone else that had an experience in a Tesla app. But I think those two things will be critical steps. But, going from 91 to 173 square miles and having a lot more cars, these are clearly positive steps. And in the meantime, California is out there, right? And they're doing rides in California with obviously someone in the driver's seat. So perhaps not as interesting, but showing what they can do in that ODD.
In the ODD, it's impressive. It's big. We have public data from the city of Austin around incidents. And despite us not knowing how large the vehicle fleet size is, we have no public data on that. We do have public data from the city of Austin. There has only been one reported incident. Because you and I remember, oh, this thing is going to blow up on day one. It's going to fail. It's going to fail. Only one incident. Waymo has more incidents. And yes, I know they have more vehicles. But if all holds and this pattern holds and they had more vehicles, they're truly onto something. Because when September rolls around, you and I both know it's opening to the public. That's what Elon has said. This is pretty impressive.
I mean, that will be a good milestone if they deliver on that, which I just said, like that was a key one. Getting rid of the that observer's another one. I don't know what the incident was. Obviously, you want to have zero, but things are going to happen, and there's a lot of focus. I mean, there was a video this past week of someone that was in one of the cars. They were going to make a left turn into Terry Black's. For those that have seen our video on this, you know that we went to Terry Black's on multiple occasions, and the car didn't make the left. We got in there 3 or 4 times quite easily. As an aside, I think we even talked about this in the video when we had an human-driven Uber driver that didn't pull into the parking lot, and I think took us into, if I remember correctly, it was I think a bike lane that was there instead. But clearly, this was an issue. Now, once again, this is like no one's life was in danger. This obviously showed that there was an issue that Tesla had to deal with. In this case, the safety person got out of the car and drove it. So like you're freaking out about them being safety, and yet they literally have the safety guy in the car to deal with the situation. And everyone's like, wow, Waymo, Waymo, Waymo. I'm like, okay, but there's also videos that I've seen from Waymo where there's 2 Waymos literally just frozen at a stoplight. Now look, the context was this was from like a Tesla fanboy. It wasn't, the person was claiming it was LiDAR. I don't know why they had an issue, but there's plenty of videos out there of Waymos having these minor glitches where no one's life is in danger. And I think the problem here, Grayson, is everyone in this industry that's so focused, like the Waymo lovers and the Tesla lovers, you're missing the bigger picture where if you come at someone and say like, oh, I can't believe Tesla's doing this, and it creates this back and forth that gets vocal that the mass media picks up on, and they focus on these issues. We have 40,000 people dying on our roads, right? And you're focused on whether a car is making a left turn or freezing there, or a Waymo is stopping at a stoplight. When the bigger issue here is autonomy providing the opportunity to save lives. 40,000 people die on the road, on your roads every year. So when you actually come and attack, whether you're a Tesla guy attacking the Waymos or a Waymo person attacking the Teslas, you're not helping the overall kind of messaging. Not that it's your job to help the messaging, but you're literally cutting off your nose to spite your face in terms of like, we want there to be more adoption because we all, I think, believe that, maybe not all of us, but I think we should believe that autonomy provides an opportunity to save lives and to change our economy. Sorry for the long diatribe, but like, that is the thing that always strikes me when I get these, like, what about this guy? What about this? Like the back and forth on what essentially are minor issues. Like, why would you shut down an entire program because a car happened to freeze at a stoplight in the case of Waymo or while making a left turn? That makes no sense.
You're right. It's sad. 38,485 individuals lost their lives on the roads. It's sad. There's a solution to fix that. That solution's autonomy. Autonomous vehicles do not get drunk. They do not get distracted. And most importantly, because this is a growing statistic that hopefully NHTSA publishes more data on, they don't text and drive. I can't tell you the last time I went for a ride in my vehicle where I did not see at least one person texting and driving. That's scary. They're distracted. These vehicles are weapons. They're distracted. Autonomy will save lives. And autonomy is expanding. In Waymo, they announced on Friday that they are expanding testing officially to New York with 8 vehicles. What do you make of this expansion?
I mean, I think it's great. It's early, right? And interestingly, even though it's only 8 vehicles, even though there's a safety driver in the car, you already have the pushback, right? And there's a quote from former Mayor Bill de Blasio saying, if there's one place on earth that was not meant for self-driving cars, it's New York City. This is a really bad idea. Like, so, you know, again, this is kind of an offshoot of what I was saying before. Like, there are bigger issues that we all have in terms of trying to educate, I think, the broader populace about the opportunity for safety and for maybe reducing traffic or whatever it is, and all the benefits that it can bring to New York City and cities across, and suburbs and rural across this country. So that's going to be the fascinating thing. We obviously, we've seen the pushback in Boston, labor getting involved there. So, you know, this is the problem in the Northeast.
There's a lot of problems in the Northeast. And Mayor Adams put a tweet out about this, the current mayor of New York. And Mr. Adams said, in quote, Waymo was operating under the nation's strictest safety rules. But yet, it's very true. Waymo's operating very safely. Then I started diving into this. Where's all the pushback coming from? I found it. I put on my inspector hat and I found it. It is coming from two individual main groups that are funding this: the Bike Coalition and the Public Transits Coalitions.
The Bike Coalition? Hold on, you're talking about cyclists?
Oh yeah. They're involved in this. It's all public documentation. It's well out there. This is all public. We're going to cover it in This Week in the Autonomy Economy newsletter on Sunday. It's all out there. It's all public. They are afraid that this will take away union jobs and funding for public transport, and it will encourage people to get in more vehicles with vehicle miles traveled when they can go in bikes. Well, I lived in New York for 7 years. It gets cold in the winter. Your fingers freeze. I want to go in a car. And this offers a safe solution, but that's who's putting up this fight. And if you think things are bad now, all signs point to, you look at the betting markets, you look at the New York polling, Mamandami is going to become the next mayor. Things could get a lot worse.
Mandami, not Mamandami. Mandami. Look, I just moved my daughter into the city. My single biggest fear, safety-wise, is bikes. Is literally her walking off a sidewalk or getting out of a taxi or an Uber, and hopefully at some point a Waymo, and getting hit by the bikes. It's so ironic. And we've had some unfortunate incidents out here in the suburbs caused by bikers, caused by cyclists. So if anyone, but even if I'm a cyclist, like the predictability of an autonomous car, so it's bizarre to me that they would be the ones against autonomy. They should be for it. Autonomous car, I think, is going to be much more safe for a cyclist than it would be for these people. Like, I actually, by the way, I meant to mention this, like I parked on our street out here in town, and I was about to open my Tesla car door, and there was a car coming. I knew it was coming, right? I was only going to open a little bit. The Tesla prevented me from opening the car door because it knew the car was approaching from behind. So how are the cyclists part of the groups that are against this? Are you sure you have that right?
I'm 100% sure I have it right. So let's go into the Wayback Machine. When I was co-chair for the Autonomous Vehicle Task Force for the city of Beverly Hills, one of the biggest thorns on our side was the Bike Coalition. The Bike Coalition, well, this is their manifesto. It's all public, by the way. I want to emphasize, this is public data. They want to ban the personal ownership of vehicles. They want to ban vehicles and force people into alternative forms of transportation, micro-mobility, and bicycles. That is their North Star. That's what they want to do.
I mean, good luck with that. I don't even know what to comment on that. But aside from that kind of crazy thesis, again, let's go back to just cars versus autonomy. Like, an autonomous car is going to be safer for you, the cyclist on the road. And like, please ride your bicycle a little bit safer, because you're literally a menace on New York City roads and frankly in the suburban roads that I drive, and frankly cause, in my opinion at least, I don't have any data to support this, more safety issues than anything in the moment.
I'm going to give you a personal story. A few months ago, I took my family to New York and went to a Yankees game. And whoever planned New York City urban transit needs to go back to urban planning transit. So you have the hotel, you have the sidewalk, and then you have a bike lane, but it's not a bike lane. Well, this is a speed lane. They're going 100 miles an hour down this thing, and my daughter's going to get out of the car, and the gentleman at the hotel's putting his hands up, telling her to stop, because this guy would not stop. And then he turns around and he throws up the middle finger at my daughter. It's like it's her problem. She's trying to get out. She's a little kid trying to go to the hotel, but they don't stop. They don't abide by the rules of the road. There's no rules of the road for them. Oh boy, oh boy.
I'm glad I lit that fuse for you, Grayson. And look, there's plenty of positives about the cyclists, but I've got my issues. But let's switch back to Tesla, who, and again, we've talked about this because I think I heard some criticisms where people were ripping into the economics of what Tesla was doing in Las Vegas, because you had, right in that moment, people that were driving the Teslas through this tunnel that was in Las Vegas. So here we are. We've got some news that they're already testing FSD.
In an interview with Fortune, Steve Hill, the CEO of the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, has confirmed that they are testing FSD supervised in the tunnels with a human. And, ready for this? They're supervising the safety of that, and they have not had incidents. But yet the media tries to spin this. Oh, when they were doing the tunnel, they had a little oil leak. No, but the CEO, Mr. Hill, comes out and says they're testing it safely. And Mr. Hill was very interesting. He said that there was a pathway to go fully autonomous. I almost fell out of my chair on this. Mr. Hill stated in the interview that you're going to have the FSD supervised, as you and I use our vehicles today, and then that safety driver will move to the back seat and then eventually be removed. This is all according to Mr. Hill in the Fortune interview. I don't know how Mr. Hill's going to do it. We all see Las Vegas economy, the tourism falling off, but it seems like there is a very clear path for Tesla to operate fully autonomous in these tunnels in the regulatory environment that's seemingly open to it, maybe just a little bit now. What do you think?
I mean, there couldn't be an easier ODD than the tunnels that are in Las Vegas, right? So it's shocking that, it's not already at that point. Obviously, to your point, there's some regulatory issues that they need to move forward on. My only point was, like, this was a couple of months ago. There were some people attacking this, questioning the economics and pointing out the number of people involved. Like, this is like, criticizing Waymo for having $175,000 cars, which is what we covered last week, assuming that they will never get to production level and get those prices down. Like, you have to have a little bit of vision here to see the opportunity. Look, I get that digging holes underground is super expensive, and maybe that's a limiting factor, but the hole is dug. Let's get that thing autonomous, hopefully by CES, so we can hop in a Tesla with no one in the driver's seat, in the passenger seat, and take a nice autonomous ride from, whatever the convention center to wherever that thing goes.
This is a major hypothetical, Walt, but I want a prediction out of you. Tesla is hiring for an autopilot supervisor in Las Vegas, Henderson to be exact. That's a first indicator that they're looking at that market. If and when Tesla launches Robotaxi in Las Vegas, which I believe they will at some point, will they be able to use those tunnels to avoid the traffic? What's your prediction on that?
Why wouldn't they? Of course they would. Like, why wouldn't they? They have Teslas in there now. That's silly, of course. And hopefully they'll extend it because they'll use the tunnel for the traffic that's in that area. And rather than loop back around and just deal with the tunnel, it'll continue on and take you to wherever your destination is further down the strip.
It's great technology. Let's shift gears from Sin City to the Motor City. This week, Reuters is reporting that Stellantis shut down their SAE Level 3 internal system. They weren't getting the traction they weren't having the technical breakthroughs. To me, that's a clear sign that we've spoken about this in depth, that the autonomous driving technology is going to be built by a series of developers. If it's either Helm AI, it's Wave, it's Neuro. Is this news from Stellantis? Is this a sign of things to come that OEMs are going to have to realize that this technology cannot be built in-house and they're going to have to license?
I mean, we've talked about a little about this before in past pods and the direction that Ford has gone and what is really happening at GM now that Sterling Anderson is there. And I've always asked you this, Grayson, like, if you develop internally, if Sterling hires additional people there, does that mean that they don't do external deals? Because I think Toyota's got their version of internal development of ADAS, and yet they do external deals. Like, so to me, if we're looking at kind of incremental news items, if Stellantis is shutting down in-house development, even though it's level 3, it's not level 4, this just kind of opens up the opportunity. It's not like autonomy is going away. I'm sure Stellantis knows that. This just opens the opportunity for partnerships with existing players. And now the question is, like, if you're Stellantis, are you afraid of partnering with Google through Waymo, right? Where's Waymo? Like, we had this kind of half release with Toyota. Like, we both want them to add additional OEMs to support the network and move to the next step. If this is the great technology that we know it is, let's get some more OEMs and more. Is this a precursor to Stellantis doing something with Waymo? Or are they afraid of Google? And then is this an opportunity for Neuro to add a second OEM, for Wave to add an OEM, for May Mobility to add an OEM. So I'm kind of not shocked that the OEMs would shut down even ADAS, but I'm hoping that means that we see something in terms of new partnerships from Stellantis and GM and others with existing players in the market.
And let's not forget, Waymo has had a long-standing relationship with Stellantis going back to the Chrysler Pacifica minivans. So the relationships are there. Perhaps it happens. We don't know. But what we do know, Walt, this weekend, it's Labor Day. I'm going to be grilling. It's our 1-year anniversary of Autonomy Markets today. To listeners and viewers that have been with us through this journey, thank you. Walt, please, thank you. This has been a ton of fun. I'm looking forward to the next year. Actually, I'll be very blunt and open. I'm looking for the next years to come. We're not going to go to the senior citizen years, but we're looking at have a lot of fun on these years. Now that we're getting into September, what do we need to look for in the autonomy markets over the coming week?
Well, for those of you that are not empty nesters like I am, you're sending kids back to school. You've got a couple of in the Wall Street world conferences that are kicking in. So you'll see companies, sometimes they talk about, new developments there. You get the football season. So next week I'll be traveling down to Philly for the season opener when we hang the banner for our Super Bowl championship. So if you're in Philly and you're in autonomy, let's do some tailgating Thursday.
Do the tailgating with Walt. But Walt, I want one thing on your trip. I want a photo of a Waymo vehicle in Philadelphia. Can you make that happen for me?
I will try and make that happen. And hopefully if things don't get too rowdy and it doesn't go near the parking lots, then it will get there safely or escape the crowds safely. Philly fans are passionate.
Escape from Philadelphia. Philly fans are some of the best sports fans in the country. I used to go see Flyers games when you had Lindros. They were really great. The future is bright. The future is autonomous. The future is Autonomy Markets. Walt, until next week, and have a great game.